Thank you for being here this morning. Our study this morning is in the fifth chapter of Jeremiah, beginning with verse 11. Ned, would you word a prayer for us? Chapter 5 of Jeremiah, first part of the chapter, God commissioned Jeremiah to go through the streets of Jerusalem, see if he could find one that was righteous. He didn't say, see if you can find 10 or a dozen or 100 or 1,000. He said, see if you can find somebody that's righteous. And so he searched, and he didn't find any. He first started with the poor folks who might have been less educated, who might have been, beset with all the problems that they might have. Couldn't find any among them. And so he said, well, I'll go to the richer folks. And certainly, and the leaders. Certainly we'll find some righteous people there. He struck out again. And so that's how chapter 5 begins. He couldn't find anyone. You know, I reading haven't read very much of it, but I'm reading a book here by a Jewish person. It's interesting. This Jewish person is defending Christianity. Well, that's an interesting twist, isn't it? Jewish person defending Christianity. And in this book, he quotes that well-known atheist Richard Dawkins. And here's what he said. This Dawkins guy said, the God of the Old Testament. Now, I suppose there were some people in Jerusalem who had this same attitude. And Dawkins said, the God of the Old Testament, this is a quote from this atheist. And by the way, the atheists in America are no longer in the closet, so to speak. They're out evangelizing for atheism. I mean, they're aggressive. And he says the God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all of fiction. Jealous and proud of it. A petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak. This guy's talking about the God of heaven, the God of the universe, the Creator. How would you like to be him when he stands in the judgment? He said that a petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty, ethnic cleanser, homophobic, racist, a genocidist, a capricious and malevolent bully. Now, there are those among us that have that attitude toward God. And the contention of this Jewish writer is that the goal of this, not only the atheists, but people of other religious persuasions, are trying to stamp out Christianity in America. Now, do you suppose there were Jews among the people of Jerusalem at the time of Jeremiah? Do you suppose there were some of those people who were trying to stamp out Judaism? Do you think? You think there's some of those were saying, God, who's that? Do you suppose there were some who were saying, and even in the New Testament here, they're saying that, there's no life after this earthly existence? You suppose there were some that were saying that? The Sadducees were, and they were, part of that strain of people that had some belief in God, but were just totally ignorant of their responsibility to God. Now, with regard to this guy's statement, think about this for a moment. We say that God is sovereign. Now, what's that mean? What's sovereignty? Carolyn says complete control, has complete control. He's in charge of the rule book, right? Now, we say there's a sovereign country. What's that mean? The power is within, the control is within the country. Now, if some foreign nation come in and took control of America, we would lose our sovereignty. We'd lose our control. We would no longer be self-governing, We'd no longer have the government within our borders, so to speak. So, this Dawkins guy and people who are promoting atheism and who are rebelling against God, and not only rebelling against him, but confronting him. I mean confronting him. Blatantly confronting him. I suppose there were those in that day who were confronting him. Well, how are they confronting him? They were off worshiping Baal. They were off doing things totally contrary to the law of Moses. And so those people who suggest that, God isn't authorized to make the rules are obviously very wrong. So in picking up, and we'll begin with verse 10, God in verse 9 says, I'm going to visit this bunch of people. I'm going to visit my people. And I'll just start with 9 then. Shall I not visit for these things? For what things? Well, their corruption, their disbelief, their immoral turpitude. Shall I not visit for these things, saith the Lord? And shall not my soul be avenged on such a nation as this? Okay. The question is, and now let's get the response. In verse 10, starting. Go ye up on her walls. God is going to bring a nation against Jerusalem, against Judah. Go ye upon her walls and destroy. Well, were the walls at Jerusalem torn down? The answer is yes. Well, was the temple obliterated? Yes. And God is saying, to his instrument, in this case, the Babylonians, but make not a full end. Now destroy it, but don't make a full end. Save a remnant. There will be a remnant saved. God saw to it that that there would be a remnant saved, but not a full end. Take away her embattlements, for they are not the Lord's. The Lord was not on the side of Israel. Throughout history, previous history, God was on the side of Israel when they were in battle. God's no longer on the side of Israel. God is now directing the Babylonian invasion, you see. Verse 11, then, for the house of Israel and the house of Judah have dealt very treacherously. Again, he comes back to, well, why? Why is this? Why am I directing a foreign power against Israel, against Judah? They have dealt very treacherously against me, saith the Lord. Just like this Dawkins guy, dealing treacherously against God. Verse 12, they have belied the Lord and said, it is not he. What's that mean? It's not he. He's not God. He's not the sovereign of the universe. He's not the creator. It is not he. Neither shall evil come upon us. Neither shall we see sword or famine. See, they didn't see any connection between their unrighteousness, their evil behavior, their evil demeanor, and punishment. They saw no connection, and they had the attitude, we can do anything. We are self-sufficient. We have, in years past, you know, I can just hear them. In years past, we fought off the Assyrians, right? Remember when the Assyrians, when Sennacherib was surrounding Jerusalem, and all of a sudden, the army of Sennacherib, the army of the Assyrians were gone. God struck 185,000 of those soldiers dead. So they, you know, their history, their tradition was that Israel is going to be on top. Regardless of what happens, Israel is we're going to get through this. We're going to make it, you see. That was their attitude. Neither shall evil come upon us. Neither shall we see sword nor famine. Do you suppose there were prophets among them that were preaching that idea that, you know, nothing's going to happen? When Jeremiah was out there preaching that there's a foreign power is coming, that you're going to be destroyed, that it's going to be horrible, do you suppose there were people there that would challenge him? In our first discussion of Jeremiah, remember we talked about how that Jeremiah was beleaguered, he was challenged, he was thrown in jail, he was thrown in the pit. Well, yeah, there was a lot of opposition to Jeremiah's teaching. But these false prophets came along and said, you know, this Jeremiah doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a windbag. Everything's okay. Don't worry about it. Well, we'll see that's actually what was said. We're not going to see any bad times. And the prophets shall become wind. Now, how would we say that bad? How would we style a preacher that we didn't like what he's saying? Oh, he's an old windbag. Yeah, you know, nothing. Don't pay any attention to him. There's no consequences to what he's saying. Just don't worry about it, folks. Everything is going to be cool. Everything's going to be all right. And the prophets shall become wind, and the word is not in them. They're saying God's word's not in the true prophets, and it shall be done unto them. Verse 14, wherefore, thus saith the Lord God of hosts, because ye speak this word, because you have this attitude, because you're rejecting the Jeremiah narrative, behold, I will make my words in thy mouth fire, and this people wood, and it shall devour them. Now notice what he's saying here. You call these, you say that the prophet Jeremiah or any other true prophet is a windbag. He says, I'll make their breath, so to speak, their words fire, and the audience will be what? Wood. And their words would consume them. Obviously, their words would consume them because their words were true, and the fury was coming. Wherefore, in verse 14, wherefore, thus saith the Lord God of hosts, because ye speak this word, behold, I will make my words in thy mouth fire, and the people wood, and it shall devour them. Lo, I will bring a nation upon you from far. Now, Isaiah talked directly about, the nation that was coming would eventually come against Israel was Babylon. Well, for whatever reason, Jeremiah doesn't particularly identify Babylon, but he says, I'll bring a nation upon you from afar, or from far, O house of Israel, saith the Lord. It is a mighty nation. Now, at the time of the Assyrian Empire, the Babylonian people weren't much of a power. But the Assyrians, they diminished. Babylon increased in power in the world community, and now they were about to strike the people of Israel. He says that this is an ancient nation. Now, some scholars have pointed out that goes back to this ancient nation, refers back to Genesis 10 and 10, where Nimrod was that mighty person, and that the Babylonians were descendants of Nimrod. Now, that's what some scholars believe. But whatever the situation is, they were going to be a powerful nation. For lo, I will bring a nation upon you from afar. O house of Israel, saith the Lord, it is a mighty nation. It is an ancient nation, a nation whose language thou knowest not, neither understandeth what they say. So, this is going to be a bad situation. Verse 16, their quiver is an open sepulchre, and all mighty men. Their quiver is an open sepulchre. We've heard of, in warfare, other nations, we've heard of mass graves, right? I mean, we hear of that sort of thing, mass graves, just human bodies just bulldozed into a hole. Well, they didn't have bulldozers then, in that day, but that's what they're saying. Their quiver, their military armament is an open sepulchre. That's going to be the result. They are all mighty men, and they shall eat up thine harvest. The land that flowed with milk and honey is now going to be, as we've used the term, scorched earth policy. this army is just going to scorch the earth. It's going to be all the grapevines. When the spies came back from searching out the land of promise, they came back and said, "Man, the crops are really great here, and everything. There's really something." But now their land is going to be a land of doom and desolation. And the enemy is going to eat up their harvest. And thy bread which thy sons and thy daughters should eat, they shall eat up all thy flocks, and think in thine herds. They shall eat up the vines, and thy fig trees. They shall impoverish thy fenced cities, wherein thou hast trusted with the sword. Now it's going to be devastation throughout. And we read this over, and it's just a kind of an interesting story. But think if you would have been in that situation, or think if we were in that kind of a situation, where worked hard to have crops, pruned the vineyards, and we were just waiting for the harvest, and now somebody else is going to reap it. And these won't be just ordinary thieves. These will be military people, you see. Nevertheless, in verse 18, nevertheless, in those days, saith the Lord, I will not make a full end with you. Now, again, he comes back with that idea that Israel, that the Jews are not going to be completely annihilated. They're not going to be like the Amalekites, where God decreed that the Amalekites would be a nation that ended, a people that ended. They wouldn't be like the Edomites, where the country of Edom would be, the nation of Edom would be destroyed, never to surface again. Now the Jews, there would be a remnant that preserved physical Israel. Okay? At least until the time of Christ. And then, when the Romans got done with them in AD 70, the nation was gone. Jewish people would remain, but the nation would be gone. Declare this in the house of Jacob. Let's reread verse 19 there. And it shall come to pass when ye shall say, Wherefore doth the Lord our God all these things unto us? You see, people that are going to be coming under this oppression are going to ask the question, why is this happening? Why us? God's chosen people. Why us? They're going to be, what? What do you mean? How'd this happen? Why is God doing this to us? Those that had any belief in God would be saying, what's going on here? Wherefore doth the Lord God all these things unto us? Then shalt thou answer them. Jeremiah, you answer them, like as ye have forsaken me, and served strange gods in your land, so shall ye serve strangers in a land that is not yours. Okay, you wanted to serve gods, Baal, you want to serve them? Okay, fine. You don't want to serve me? Fine. Go into Babylon, and you can serve the Babylonians. And do you suppose the Babylonians, when the Jews got there, do you suppose the Babylonians embraced Judaism? Do you suppose, the Babylonians come down to the Jewish community and said, hey, teach us about your God? I don't think so. I think they would be, it would be the other way around. The Babylonians are probably forced try to force the Jews to serve the god of the Babylonians, or the gods of the Babylonians. Well, so Jeremiah is instructed to declare this in the house of Judah and publish it, or in the house of Jacob, and publish it in Judah, saying, okay, now, what's he supposed to say? Well, he says, hear now this, O foolish people, without understanding, which have eyes and see not, which have ears and hear not. Did Jesus ever say anything like that to his audience? Did he ever? He said, these people, they see but they don't see. They hear but they don't hear. They can physically hear, physically see, but they don't understand. They have no understanding. Verse 22, fear ye not me, saith the Lord. Fear ye not me, question, saith the Lord. Will ye not tremble at my presence? Think of that passage that I just read. To have somebody calling God a bully, and all the other adjectives that I read, shows no fear. And that, you see, there were those kind of people among the Jews. Fear ye not me, saith the Lord. Will ye not tremble at my presence, which have placed the sand for the bound of the sea by a perpetual decree, and it cannot pass it? And though the waves thereof toss themselves, yet can they not prevail. Though they roar, yet can they not pass over it. What's he talking about there? God is in control of this natural world, and he's in control of the spiritual realm. Does the ocean kind of curve? Is the ocean flat? Some of you scientist types. Pardon me? When God talked to Job after his encounter with these three friends and then that other guy, he pretty much told Job, and he used this whole issue of the ocean, the seas. God determines, he controls the ocean, and in the sand. Sand about every seashore, right? It's the way God set it up. It's the way He's controlled it. God didn't wind up the universe and go off and go to sleep someplace. God still operates the universe. And what we're saying here is, guys like Dawkins, the atheists, say, can you imagine those stupid people, those stupid religious people, believing that there's a mighty force controlling things? Now let's reverse that. What about somebody that believes that all of this came about by just some millions of happy coincidences and billions of happy coincidences where all of this this universe just kind of evolved? what's the most stupid belief? I mean, which side is stupid? You say. Well, verse 23. But this people hath a revolting and rebellious heart. They are revolted and gone. If God set up the laws of the universe, and he set up the laws of the spiritual realm, then what right does anyone have to challenge those laws or those rules? What Jew had the right to challenge the law of Moses? What individual today has the right to challenge the New Testament teachings of Christ and his apostles? What right would anybody have to challenge those laws, those rules? I mean, what right would they have? These Jews, they had a rebellious heart. Now, we know what rebellion is if our kids don't pay attention to us, right? We see, maybe some of us have experienced that. Now, what right do people have to challenge the rules of God? Verse 24, neither say they in their hearts, let us now fear the Lord our God. So they were saying, the Jews were saying, well, we don't really fear God. I mean, by not paying attention to his law, that was a demonstration that they didn't fear God. And he's further in Jeremiah says, our God that giveth rain, both the former and the latter, the autumn rain and the spring rain, the rainy seasons. You see, in his season, we call the rainy season, he reserved unto us the appointed weeks of the harvest. Certain plants do well in cooler climates. Others do better in warmer climates. I mean, God organized the universe so that regardless of the climatic conditions, there would be plants that do well. Do animals do better in some seasons of the year, some climates? Well, yeah. I'm glad that's true. I'm glad those rattlesnakes don't come out in the wintertime, They're just things like that. So God has control of all of this. But he says then in kind of a new paragraph there in verse 25, he says, your iniquities have turned away these things. Your iniquities have turned away the gifts that God is providing, both physical and spiritual. Your iniquities have turned away these things, and your sins have withholden good things from you. Now, what kind of a world, what kind of an America what kind of an America would it be if the guys like Dawkins, the atheist, were able to convince everybody, or most of the people, that they should rebel against God, that there is no God? What kind of a society would we have? What kind of social order would we have? Pardon me? Yeah, it would be like that situation, where the only moral compass is the human being. Jeremiah said, and we'll read that later on, that it's not in man to determine his own ways, you see. Because, why is that the case? Well, because everybody has an opinion, right? Every human being has an opinion. And one human being says, well, it's fine to kill babies, right? And another one says, well, no, that's wrong. One human being says, well, it's okay to kill old people when they're no longer of social value. So, oh, no, that's not right. Well, then, if there's no standard, then who's right? Some people have the idea that it's okay to, same-sex marriage, that sort of thing. And then I said, oh, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. Well, if there's no standard, if there's no supreme standard, no sovereign standard, who's right? Either one of them might be right. Either one of them's right. If there's no standard, because it's just a matter of opinion. So, that's what Jeremiah is reasoning with these people. Of course, God is telling him what the narrative, what to say. For among my people, in verse 26, for among my people are found wicked men, and they lay wait, as he that setteth snares. They set a trap, they catch men. Read in the paper where some dude was ambushed, some policemen someplace in the country, just ambushed them, waited for him. Well, Jeremiah is saying that's what you people are doing. You are you're laying wait. You're setting a trap for them, and they catch men. Now, here's the. And he furthers that in verse 27. As a cage is full of birds, you think of this. Here you're catching birds or catching whatever, and the idea here is the cage is full. So are the houses full of deceit. Therefore, they have become great and waxen rich. What's he saying here? Some of you people are taking advantage of others. You're taking advantage of their wealth. And I know people don't want to talk about this, but there are those in our social order that want to gobble up all the wealth they can to the detriment of the folks, the ordinary folks. Now, I know this is not maybe not a place to discuss this sort of thing, but when there are in America people that have billions and billions and billions, where'd they get that? Where'd they get it? Sure not willing to share it. And how they done it? I'll tell you how they've done it. They've lobbied Congress and state houses to get the rules in their favor, so they can gobble up more and more and more. Their cages are full. There were those in the Jewish community that had that same attitude. Their cages are full. And they're full at the expansion, at the they're at the because they have rigged the rules. They're waxing fat. They've grown fat. They shine. Yea, they overpass or overlook the deeds of the wicked. They judge not the cause of the fatherless, yet they prosper, and the right of the needy do they not judge. They've rigged the rules against those that are less powerful. In the New Testament, what party of the Jews rigged the rules so that they could become powerful and rich to the detriment of the ordinary folks? Was it not the Pharisees who had the who even wouldn't take care of their parents? They had this rule that they dedicated their resources to God, and so they didn't have any money then to take care of their parents. That was the attitude of the Pharisees. And that was the attitude of these Jews at that time. They rigged the rules. And there's a lot of rule riggers around today, rigging the rules to the detriment of other folks. And particularly, when James, what did James say about pure religion? To visit the what? The widows and the orphans, those that had no power, that had no resources. And pure religion is one of dealing with those shortcomings that some folks have, you see. Yet they prosper, and the right of the needy they judge. Now, shall I not visit for these things? God's saying, shall I not punish that visit appear? Saith the Lord, shall not my soul be avenged on such a nation as this? Shall that, what do you mean? He's saying, what do you mean? When they say, well, what? What have we done? What have we done? That we have all this punishment? And God replies here, shall I not visit and avenge for these deeds?